since we spent a week in the Dolomites, we spent a week in Venice. I did Venice last week, and I thought, why not do the Dolomites today? So this is a shot that I actually put up on Facebook about a week ago, and a lot of people reacted and said, oh, paint this. So I decided I would. What this is I was painting on location, looking not this direction, but that direction. And I was painting a view overlooking the lake in Alleghe. And at the end of it, someone said, turn around and look. And I turned around and looked up, and my God, this little building here is a hotel we were staying in. But that's the site that I saw. And I thought, the light was gorgeous. So I decided I'd do a painting of this today. And every time you do a painting, you're gonna, some people get into the mode where they do the same kind of lighting and the same kind of look. And this is definitely not the same kind of lighting. It's pretty flat. It's late evening or early evening, I should say, late afternoon, early evening lighting. And it's above from the right. So this painting really is going to be a little bit more about color and texture than it is about heavy duty value and form. I'm going to play with a few things, and I'm going to get a very quick sketch worked out here. We're going to bring this big mountain. I see 4 layers, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this comes in at about 1/4, top of this mountain. Comes down about here. And then we've got a little mountain sticks up in front of it, overlaps. These are kind of marks that I use as placement marks, and I may change, probably will. We're going to pull up. It tends to go uphill left to right, so I'm going to do something a little different with the clouds and see if I can make it work a little bit better in terms of composition. We got this peak here. So it's just a little higher, so about maybe here. Some divisions down in here. So this is really going to be about color. I'd like to get the drawing down as quickly as possible, basically because of the size and the time frame.
What size is that?
24 by 36. It's on a very, it's an old painting that I didn't like. I took a palette knife and I took a little Naples yellow and white, kind of got rid of it all. And so that's what I'm working on.
Is it a cardboard?
It's canvas, stretched canvas. Run it right off the page there. And then we're going to bring this element in, about here. And I'm not going to paint the architecture. I'm going to eliminate that. So we do a little faking. Just because this painting is definitely not about architecture. I'm going to bring all these are going to be trees. So that's just a reminder that, not that I need it, but that those are trees. And so that's basically how we're going to start. Now, I'm going to take a palette knife and mix a little bit of white and throw a little Prussian on the palette and a little bit of ultramarine. And we're going to get the sky color in, kind of up in here. That's, I don't like it with a knife, so I'm going to pick up an 1.5 inch gesso brush, and we're just going to get it in there. Look how fast I can get it in. A little bit of turf. You can see it's kind of runny. If it's too runny, I'm going to run into problems. So what I will do is probably wipe a little bit of it off. But what the thinness does is it gives me the flexibility of going quickly. And it's I had a lot of terp right at the beginning. And on that first stroke, a lot of it came out and you can see right about there. So I just wiped a little bit of it off. So a little bit more pigment, not so much terp now. And I was debated when I looked at this piece as to whether I would do the clouds. And I thought, no, I'm going to do the clouds because it's an additional interesting texture. And for that, I'm going to keep the blue brush, and I'm not going to use it again, because this way I can use other brushes. I'm going to take another gesso brush, take some white, a little bit of medium, a little bit of a blue and brown because it's a gray. Blue and brown will give me my gray. And I want to get some of those clouds in. That's a little darker than I wanted. Not a lot, just a little. I'm going to try and work really dry here. The reason I'm working really dry is I want to be able to work back into it without fighting really, really wet paint. And when you work dry, you're just rubbing it in a little bit. You're scumbling. You're doing a little more scumbling. And I already used up the paint, so I got to mix up a little bit more. And I don't care if it's exactly the same color. I just want it to be the same value. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, pretty close. Pretty close. Now I want to use some of this darkness against the light of the mountains so that I can really get them to pop. Even maybe more so than they look like they're popping here. A little bit more light into that color. It's nice and dry. It's really, really sticky paint. Now you might wonder why I chose this scale. And you know what? I chose the format more than I did the scale. I needed something long. And I have a few canvases, boards kind of prepared. This was the only one that I had prepared that really fit the format that I wanted. So I said, what the heck, let's go for broke and do a big one. And here we are. And I've done, tackled a couple of 24 by 36 on these Friday demos before. They're a little challenging, just because time. I know I mentioned time, and the only reason I mentioned time, truthfully, is because of the time constraint that I'm working in, and I'm not really trying to make an excuse for it as much as I am just telling you that there's a reason for me doing certain things a certain way. And the reason quite often is a matter of time. There are certain things that I know I can do faster. Okay, and it gets a little bluer, I noticed. So I held off on this right as it comes down in here. So I added just a little ultramarine to the color I was using right there, and we'll put it a little sky color. We'll just kind of push it into the paint here. Okay, so that gives me the dark. Now I'm going to get the light, and then we're going to get into the mountains right away because I don't want to spend that long. So I'm going to pick up another one of my 1-inch wonders here. Just called it that, didn't I? I'm going to take a little white, a little maples for the warmth. And don't want to go completely really, really white right now. And I got to put some medium in it so it flows, so I don't have to take a long time. Well, I got a little too much medium, see it? It's dripping and running, which means I just dried it off on my paper towel. Now, as I blend into the bottom, I blend into the brown and it becomes more of the cloud. As I go up top, what happens is I mix it into the sky and I run into a little bit of a muted problem. So initially I'm going to keep it, not going to bump it up to the sky quite yet. Partly I'll contaminate my paint, and that's the main reason. I really don't want to do some wispy little cloud flares in here, pick up the base color, and we'll bring it up and push it. Again, as it touches the sky, I'm going to contaminate the color.
Lorella would like to know if you have any thoughts on edge handling for clouds.
Edge handling, yeah. There's two types of edges. There's an interior edge and an exterior edge. The interior edge will always be softer, and I recommend just pull your paint one into the other and let the, I've used this phrase before, let your paint do the work, or let your brush do the work. Don't you fight it. So if you notice, that's what I'm doing here.
I'm going to adjust this a little bit because unfortunately.
And the interior of the clouds, or the exterior of the clouds, tend to usually have a little bit of a harder edge to them, a little more crispness, but not really, really a strong crispness. And my feeling on doing clouds is learning how to indicate them well. Work with a large brush that feels like almost a little out of control. Now, that may not work for everybody, but I find that it works really well.
Sorry about that. Just trying to get.
And I'm working out of one or two little pots of color here and kind of mixing them together, but letting the brush, once again, do the work. Once the brush gets a little too dirty, I literally got to go back and replenish the color, clean it up a little bit, and kind of start anew. And if I may bring the sky back in a couple instances that I can see right now. Yeah. The other thing, if you're painting clouds on location, I'm talking about painting from a piece of reference. When you're painting on location, those clouds are changing radically, particularly if there's any sort of wind. And you've really got to stay with a huge brush and just paint the essence of the feeling of that cloud, and don't worry about the exactness, because it's going to change and you're not going to be in the same position 5 minutes after you start doing them. So one of the things that I've learned is, if you love the clouds, tackle them first. If the clouds are something that are just kind of I don't want to say an afterthought, but something that kind of contributes but doesn't dominate the composition, then deal with the clouds after. But if don't go cloud chasing, in other words, it's very easy and very seductive to want to paint the clouds, and then they'll change, and then you're trying to paint that cloud and it's changed, and try and paint the next cloud and it's changed. Pretty soon you're driving yourself just literally bananas. So, in this case, when you're painting from reference, it's a little different. You can slow down, be a little bit, and not worry about it. Like I could do these. The reason I'm doing them early is because I want to set up the tonality that the mountains are going to play against. And so there is a reason. Now, every time you choose to do a painting, generally you're going to choose for one of several reasons. You're going to fall in love with the subject. And that's something that I think I used to do more than I do today. Secondly, you fall in love with the color, which is probably where we're at today. Third, you fall in love with the lighting and the form. All right. And finally, you fall in love with the composition, which when I paint a location, that's basically where my interest lies, is in the composition. Just letting that brush barely touch the canvas and deposit just a little bit of paint, pushing it into the paint that's already there. Now, the more you do that, the more I pick up that color that's underneath, the more of that I contaminate the color I have on the brush. Now, there's times that you may want to do that. All right, I want to move into the mountains in a second because I've spent, close to 15 minutes messing with this, which I don't want to say that's a long time because it's really not. But in the grand scheme of what we're trying to accomplish, it is, because the mountains are going to take most of the time. There's not even a question about that. They're going to take, that's where most of the time is going to be spent. Okay. So we got the essence of the clouds. Now I could bring a little bit more ultramarine back here if I wanted to. That wouldn't hurt because I can see it. I see a little more blue. And just kind of push it around into the paint. Particularly when there's no edge that you're going for. You're just going for the movement of color and value. All right. Now let's clean that brush a little bit. Actually, let's keep that brush over there. And I'm going to go with one more. This time I'm going to go for the kind of the base color of the mountain. I think what I'll do is do a little bit of quick drawing first. And by that, what I mean is indicate a few of those dark crevices, just so I kind of have a placement. Okay. They may not end up exactly the way I'm going to place them in the beginning, but let's start right about here. I'm going to go a little darker. I don't think I'm dark enough. Blue and brown and white. Okay. It's a little bluer than I want. So what I might do is throw a little bit of my alizarin into it just to kind of mellow it out a little bit. Maybe a little more white. All right, it comes down, and then there's a bigger crevice here, bigger here, we got a little one here, a little bit in here. Don't worry about, I don't care if these are really neat and accurate. They're placements right now. A little pull right down here, get a little pull right about there. Bigger than I wanted. And we get a little on the other side, a little tiny one, and then kind of a darker, it just gets darker and dingier up in here. So let's get a little bit of a dark edge because I can see it. I have to be aware as I'm painting this that I may not have time to go back and fix this. Because again, I've mentioned this many, many times, but I'm kind of trying to approach this much the same as I would if I were painting on location in plein air, simply due to time. Now, what would I do different if it were a studio painting? Not a lot. I just go slower. I'd still approach it relatively the same way. I would just be a little bit more cautious as I'm being a little bit more flying by the seat of my pants right now, for lack of a better expression. And it's fun. You're constantly testing yourself. So this is going to come down, and there's another part of a mountain here, and one over here goes down about here. I probably have that up too high. I'm well aware that I probably have some things that are not exactly right once again, if I'm painting plein air, that's the situation I'm in. And I'm going to tell you, as I told a lot of the individuals when we were painting at my workshop on location, no one knows if this is broader or taller. No one knows by the time you make a nice painting out of it and depict it as close as you can, but don't over worry it about being 100% accurate. Just make it look good. That's what we're trying to do when we paint. We're just trying to make it look good. And I shouldn't use the word just. It's a lot more complicated than saying, oh, we're just trying to make it look good. Okay, there's the beginning. So we're going to move forward to the mountain right in front of it a little bit. And I'm going to put those same kind of darks in on it, a little bit darker. Maybe I see a hint of green. So first one we're going to get is right about here. Now these are going to be kind of slopped over a little bit later on. So let's get them in there kind of free and loose. Yeah, I can bring this down lower, this up higher. That's got a lot more green in it, which I will play up. Right now, I'm much more concerned about the value than I am the color. Down, comes down here. We'll pull, and then we'll get some areas down in here. That's the fun stuff. That's where you get to almost pretend like you're a famous abstract artist here. And then you try and bring it together and make some sense out of it as we approach some form of completion. And then we got the mountain that's even in front of that. Again, we come up in 4 layers. Remember, I brought 4 layers. 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom. There's a top of it right here. Back here, down the side. Works its way all the way down here. Pretty much back in here. See, I smeared some of that blue down in there, which is, I don't mind. It happens, it happens. That could be what we might call either a happy accident, or if I don't like it, I call it a mistake. Both are fine. A little more green in it because we're coming forward and get a little bit more color into some of these because they're not in deep shadow, as is the foreground mountain. A little bit back there. Right. Where is that? Right about there. Okay, we got that down. That could be a little lighter as it goes down. I probably have it a little too dark, so I just put some more light blue into it. Okay, bring a little more color to it. Get some other tones in here underneath that I'm going to need probably back in here. Over here, a little lighter. When I go lighter, I'm going to make it a little bit bluer and green. Now, the reason I said a little lighter is exactly what I'm going to do now. That's the reason I said a little bit lighter. So I'm going to take brown and I'm going to take the blue. And maybe a little of the green. Looks like I might even have to add a little bit more green to my palette here, but we're going to start here. That nice big dark. Nice big dark area. I'm going to come down the side of that. And down here, look for the angle. Angle was about there. Yeah, I know I'm gonna run out of green, but so let's get a little bit in there. This is gonna be my darkest area. Right up in here.
Just a question, when you have more time, is there a certain brush you like to use with
No.
when you're doing clouds?
No. When I'm painting, I try and stay with big brushes. I think it's a great question, by the way. I almost always stay with a large brush until I feel I need that small brush. You know, you're gonna feel it when you need it. It's just gonna come out and let you know that you can only do so much with that one brush you're doing. So my feeling is use my large brush as long as I can. And particularly in the lay-in. This is the lay-in, by the way, okay? So during the lay-in, don't switch down to a small brush. You're picking at the wrong time. And, you know, I've used this phrase in teaching, and the phrase is, you need to learn how to see things in the proper order. In other words, I notice in here a lot of texture, a feeling of trees. Don't worry about them right now, because what I see first is a dark mass, and that's what I want to get in. I want to get that dark mass in. Then if I have time later, great, I'll put those trees in, but I may not have time. In which case, I live with the dark mass. And that's, you know, there's great paintings you look at sometimes, and you look and you think about the simplification. Now, we don't know that we haven't been able to sit down and talk with Joaquin Sorolla or John Singer Sarge. It'd be wonderful if we could, and find out if they left it like that because time, lack of interest, or their plan all along was to leave it like that. You just don't know. And truthfully, you know, you can say, students use this line all the time, by the way. Well, that's how I wanted it. If you say that and it doesn't look good, then that wasn't a very smart move. All right. But there may be truth in that. Okay. So we've got all these 3 or 4 areas covered right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the light part of the clouds, the brush I was using for that, and I'm going to mix up a beautiful warm color. Now you can say, what color? Well, I've got these brighter oranges. I'm going to go with what I consider kind of the neutral version of that color. And I'm playing with 4 or 5 colors right now, just seeing what I can come up with. And I did lay an additional color on my palette today, Indian yellow. Indian yellow is really powerful. You know, that's pretty close for what I want for my initial lay-in. Ochre, Indian yellow, white, and Naples. Okay. So let's kind of we got to get this covered. And then I can go back and add the texture, the detail, things of that nature that need to be added. Color variations. Yeah, I added just a little color variation right now, a little more orange that I happen to see. And I use raw sienna. I just took color I had, added raw sienna into it, and cat orange hue. Sometimes it's nice, you can kind of play with that as you lay things in. But basically, I want to keep things pretty much on that base color that I started with. If I get a little dirt mixtures in there, great, because there's a lot of color, a lot of textures and color that is in these rocks. So do not be afraid of that when it happens at all. In fact, embrace it. Okay, now we're going to leave that alone because it's forward, and we're staying with the back rocks. So we're going to do the same up here. It's a little darker. I'm contaminating that color a little bit, so I cleaned it up, added a little bit more Naples to it, a little bit more of the Indian yellow. And I kept my little tube of Indian yellow handy in case I needed more, because I knew what I was doing, what I was getting myself into, knowing that I might need more of it. Just that the larger brushes will give you a little bit more character of rocks, where if you use a small brush, it's like you're painting a piece of architecture and you're trying for the precision that architecture conveys. And in this case, that's not what we're after. We're not after that kind of precision. We're after more freedom, more orange through a little, because I see it. I see a little bit right in here. Let's just pop it in while I've got it on my brush. Maybe a little bit right there too, as long as I see it. And back here, as long as I got it in my brush. Leave it alone, go back to my base color. You can get, I know I can get hung up. And that's why you heard me say, leave it alone. I'm actually talking to myself when I say that. Now there's a cool cast shadow right here over these. And I'm going to deal with that in a second. But right now, I just want to stay literally focused on the one color of the rocks. There's no sense of kind of filtering over to that at this particular time. There's going to be plenty of time to do that. We're going to come down on the face of this rock. Go down in there, down here, over a little bit. Like I said, those were placeholders, so I don't know if they're exactly where I want them or not. They're kind of where I want them, but maybe not exactly. Let's see on this, right about here, we get a nice orange that comes down, and the rocks down in here tend to have a lot more warmth, kind of maybe a little bit of a muted orange, but a little bit of an orange, kind of a burnt orange little look to them down in here. A little bit of that color right about there. As long as I got it in my brush, once again, pop it into a few places. Okay, don't dwell on it though. All right, go back to the base color, because we got to get that in there before we get anything else going on in these wonderful textural characteristics of the rocks here. I added a little bit, I have a warm white on my palette. I added a little bit of that warm white right now because I see it get quite a bit hotter, not hotter, but lighter up there. So what I did is just threw a little bit of warm white into it. Same with this, right about here. And right about there. And then as we move up, it's lighter. So I've just basically added warm white to the color I was working with. It's pretty thick, has a lot of yellow in it. And we'll go back to my base color again. Bring some more ochre to it because I think it needed it. I'm using a lot of paint. I can see I'm going to need to add paint to my palette here because I'm pretty bold with it in terms of how thick it is. We want to go right about here, and then it goes kind of into a shadow at about this point. So we want to get this in. And then maybe a little bit here, then it goes into shadow. So let's get the rest of this rock in. Oh, I like that stroke, that wet, nice wet into wet little blurb that I got there. I want to have enough time to put the textures back into this, which I really am looking forward to. It's one of the reasons I even chose this. So I'm really trying to move pretty quickly, not maybe as quickly as I was hoping, but pretty quickly in this area. A little bit of dirt color. And then we get some of those other colors going on. I see a little bit in there. It's blue and brown mixed into that, into the same color. Okay, let's go over in here. There's a lot of it in here. I can really have fun, but let's get into that. That's going to go cooler. So I'm mixing more blue into it, and I want it darker than the clouds. So you're always looking at the adjacent for value. And it's cooler. It's cooler and it's darker. So those are the two things I have to think about when I'm mixing that particular color, that particular paint. Color and value. It's darker than the clouds and it's cooler. So just kind of get that in there. And kind of as it works its way over, it's not pick up some of that more blue color comes down. Okay, now let's take that color and mix it back into the orange. And we come up with kind of a dirty, warm color. And we're going to put a little bit of textures into the mountain here. Got that little dirty, I just dirtied up the base color I was using. Darker here, bring a little bit more of that cool tone into it. Maybe it went too cold, so I threw some more orange back into that. Okay, I kind of like that. It's working. All right, I'm gonna leave it alone for a second. I'm gonna move up to this hill. Warm on the top. It's got a little bit of light happening up top. So I'm going to try. That's probably warmer than I want, but I'm going to start with that. And then it cools off a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue to that color and lighten it up at the same time. Blue. So as it comes down in here, it cools down just a little bit into the shadow. More. I did it, but I didn't do it enough. More. Blue. And I'm using the blue and orange together. The cat orange shoe. Okay. Now I see it get a lot cooler. So I'm going to add a lot more ultramarine. And maybe a little violet, maybe we'll bring a little violet into it. That looks like it might work. Let's see. Yeah, I kind of like that. Let's go. Now my decision of value, my decision of color is good. My decision of value might be off a little bit because it's got to be light enough to stand next to this foreground mountain. So we just keep that kind of lavender. It's a muted lavender is what it is. Kind of a blue lavender color. And if it comes out a little too strong one way or the other, don't sweat it. Just get it in there. Be right on the value. Don't worry if you're wrong on the color. That needs to be lighter. It will be. I guarantee. It needs to be. A little more blue, a little bit more white. Got to get this whole lay-in done so I can give myself enough time. And I'm really behind from where I think I should be. So if I shut up for a little bit, it's because I'm trying to play catch up. And that means that I'm doing a little bit of analyzing as I work, which I do anyway. I shouldn't make it sound like that's something I do occasionally. Okay, this is pretty much the same thing. So I'm gonna, again, blue and orange together, maybe a little bit. Well, I'm almost run out of my blue. Brought a little bit more violet to it. Let's see what happens. I don't think I'm light enough. Let's try it. Yeah, that's good. Wow. Shocked. Shocked and happy because I came close to what I wanted to do. Texture of the rock versus the foliage on the rock, the greenery. As Monty Python would say, the shrubbery. Sometimes I don't know if you guys are noticing, but I'm using that brush a lot of different ways. Sometimes I'm pushing really hard. Sometimes I'm just letting the tip tickle an area. And I will go back and reevaluate some of those at some time. Not at this time. For lack of a better word, I'm copying what I'm seeing. Okay, a little bit of that greenery in here. I call it greenery, but because I know it's green, but I'm not painting a specific green. I'm really green and brown together. It's pretty much my mixture. And a little bit in here. A lot in here. Okay. Let's get a little bit of that. Okay. And then there's some creases in there, which we'll need to get into. I'll see if I can get a few of those in right now with this brush. A little too thick, but don't have time to fix it. Okay. A little bit here. It's pretty much very similar kind of a color almost. So I can almost take the color I was just using, kind of the violet-y color, maybe a little darker, just a little bit. And the fact that I have not cleaned the brush really well sometimes can work for you when you're painting this kind of these kind of rocks and this quickly. So let's now get the shadows in on that rock. Now, what are they? That's a more difficult color because it's cool, but it's not as dark as this. So it's starts about here. Nope, not quite. I'm going to throw some Naples into that, see if I can get it lighter. Okay. Yeah, let's stay with that for right now. And it goes up and then comes down. And it's odd, they got these areas in the Dolomites that you swear from a distance would be snow because they're so light down in here. And what it really is crushed rock that has fallen. And it's amazing. It really is really interesting. I got a feeling I'm going to end up going over a little bit today just because of the involvement. Now I'm going to mix that into that base color. We're going to come back into these hills up in here and start to add some of the subtle kind of dirtier types of colors that aren't as bright. Got to use your brush in a lot of different ways to create the textural characteristics. Where all these little crevices just kind of indicate them right now. If I can, at the very end, I'm going to come in with my plan has been really from the outset, finish it with a palette knife and add a lot more of the real thicker lights. But I've got to get enough of this underlying. If I don't get enough of the underlying texture down, it's going to look a little vacant. And there's a lot of wonderful color variations. I can see a warm sneaking out right in here, right on the edge. I see another warm back in these hills. I see some warms. I see that getting kind of warm. And then that crevice, which is right here, breaks there, breaks there, down, up the side of that rock. And then there's another rock adjacent to it, right there. This is, when you're painting on location, it's really easy to get lost. And you need to kind of have one or two landmarks that you can always go back to and reestablish. And sometimes I usually use dark lines or the tallest mountain, like this one, the center mountain that I got up in there. I will use things like that quite often as a landmark that I know I can go back to if I have to. And it just helps you with placement of things. Got too much dirty paint on that brush, and there you go. That's exactly what happens. Another little crease. We got that. We got one here, one here, one here. And then we get that kind of dirtier base color down towards the bottom, right about in here. A cleaner color. Go back to this mountain and get some that texture into it because we're dealing with a lot of different areas here. I'm going to grab a small brush for a second that I actually sketched with. Lay out a little bit of more blue. I know I'm going to need it, and I'm probably going to need more green. I'll have to reach down and find that. I don't have it handy. But what I'm going to do is just draw a few of these little key marks in. Just to clarify, So remember what I said, put them in there and then fix them later. That's what I'm doing now, just doing a little bit of fixing. I lost this completely.
You're talking about the structure.
Yeah. Top of that mountain, that mountain, get that nice dark, right? We got it there. I see it. It's this. That's too dark, but bakers can't be choosers. Right now, even though it's too dark, I'll live with it. Because maybe in the grand scheme of things, it'll work. That seems to be feeling a little better now. Want to put a few little darks. Could probably do this with a knife too, but right about there. It's feeling a little cold and dark, so I brought a little alizarin into it. Okay. Check some other areas. Just move. You got to keep your eye moving around because you can end up with really beautiful painting in one area and the rest of it can fall apart. So the whole painting is an abbreviation, indication. It's not a refinement. And so what you want to do is you want to keep moving, constantly keep moving. Don't dwell in any one area for too long of a time. Otherwise, you'll end up with a beautiful area and the rest of it will fall apart. Like I said, I'm going to grab one of my knives here and come in and add a little bit of textural quality. I'm going to take pure Naples, put it down on I'm going to take some white. I'm doing this with a knife. And those are the two colors I'm going to use initially. And then I'm going to bring a little bit of my solvent-free gel into it. And I think that's going to work. I think that's I probably could have used a warm white, but let me just see. Yeah, that's probably going to work. I think I'm going to bring some actual pure yellow, cad yellow hue into that mixture. Okay, I think that might do it. Maybe a little bit more. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, kind of like that. That's kind of gooey, huh? Stand back for a second. Value color looks okay. You got to be bold when you start using a knife. Just trust yourself and just say, I'm going for it and it's going to work. The old paint like you know what you're doing. And if it doesn't come out, you can blame me. I like it so far. It's working. I'm not crazy about that knife. The size of that knife is kind of messy. So I went to a little bit of a smaller knife. Got that at the top, got it in here, down around. Some more breaks in here, down around the base. And I got to add some nice color to these mountains too. I'm probably doing this at the wrong time, but I wanted to see how it's going to work. So I think I'll lay off it for a second and I will return to it once I get some other areas taken care of. Well, that's a pile of paint, huh? Okay. I was going to lay off it for a little bit. I want to go into this hill and maybe with a nice large brush and add a little bit of shadow detail with blue and brown. And I think that's going to work out fine right there. A little bit more blue, but just about it's got what I kind of want right there. Okay, I'm gonna step back for a second. Okay, I'm gonna lighten the top of that. I mentioned when I first did it that it was probably a little too colorful, which I think is gonna work for me. Not positive, I think it's gonna work for me. So I bring in a lighter, warm color to this. That's probably about right. Tell you, I'm just kind of going for broke here and crossing my fingers. I could bring a little brown into that. It's going a little too sweet. So the browns tend to mellow the color out a little bit. I get a little bit more lightness. So I added a little bit of that color that I was using down in here. And mix that back with my dirty color. Kind of come in. I want it in between. There's a transition that occurs right in this area. Well, from here, it looks okay. When I stood back up close, I was not sure about it, but when I stood back, it's tended to come together pretty good. So I'm going to live with it, not fuss on it anymore. Now I want to go into let's go bring a little crevice up in here and another one maybe back right there. And then let's go into that base color, that violet. There we go with the blue. And I'm going to see what I can get out of it. I'm going to bring a little bit of medium to it because it's not sticking. There we go. Okay, I want to get a little bit more blue in it. Oh, a little too much, but don't mind it. It's adding that textural quality that I was looking for. A lot of interesting textures if you can get them in there, back in here, back down. And then the top of that, I want to firm up a little bit. So blue, brown, and this right there. Okay, step back. Good enough. Okay. Where's my number? Here we go. Let's take this number 8 filbert. I need to get this area taken care of, which are the fallen rocks that appear really light like snow, and it's not. So it's color like this is close. The value is about right. I'm not sure the color is about right, but the value is definitely where I want it. Okay, I'll leave it. Don't have time to fuss with it as much as I think I could do some more interesting stuff to it. Don't have time. Okay. Let's take this hill and do the same kind of thing. So this time I'm going to take it, make it a little lighter. And just add a few little lighter snaps here and there that I can see. Step back. I'm not, when you hear me saying that, I'm letting you know what I'm doing. I step back just about 2 paces just so I can get a look at the total, because as I paint this, I see this. I don't see how it relates to the rest of the painting. And it's very important that the painting work as a whole and not as this part looks really good, this part looks really good, but as a whole, it sucks. You know, you want the whole darn painting to look decent. Leave that alone. Got a couple light spots right in there I'm not crazy about. So let's get rid of them. Let's mix up the blue, the brown, whatever it takes to get to air. Close, a little bit more. Just about had it. And there. I've got a lot of that dirty paint in my brush. Way too warm. There we go. Okay, that's about as much as I'm going to be able to get done on that, I think. But take this foreground, put those trees in. I'm going to try and get rid of some of these little white hickeys I've got in here because they're bothersome. So I'm going to use this great number 8 rosemary filbert here, and I'm going to mix up as dark as I can go, and with a lot of green in it. And I'm going to bring some medium to it, and hopefully we can get the feeling of some of these trees. Shapes. That's all. Whoops! I got a lot of dirty paint in that brush. Hang on, I'm gonna wipe that brush down. Ugh. Even though I got rid of a lot of the color I wanted in there, I had a lot of other color in there, and it was starting to come through, and it just causes problems. So there we go. Big tree right here. Big tree. See what happens? I'm picking up every time I paint over another color, I am picking up that color. So you've got to clean your brush and replenish quite often. And you want the rhythm of the tree. Sometimes you see a whole bunch and sometimes you don't see any. So as I stand back, that's working. I just stood back just a couple feet and it feels okay. So we're going to bring some trees in from the bottom here. Don't want them even. Okay, that's starting to work pretty good. I want to double check the top of that because I'm probably not going to get back to it. A little bit there. And we'll break a little bit more into here. little textural quality, so it isn't just a big flat light space. There's a lot of busyness that goes in there. The more time I had, the more time I probably put into the character of the busyness of all these rocks. This is actually cool because I'm challenging myself on something that is pretty
Complicated.
absurd. And I like doing that. Just see what I can do. I advise you all try that from time to time. Push yourself. Push yourself. See what you can get done. Now I'm going to mix up. Good. We're about a half an hour. Got about a half an hour. So I'm going to play with some colors back in these hills back in here. And I've got the light already mixed in one spot, but I'm going to mix a nice brilliant color, a color that's with my Indian yellow and white. Let's see what I can get out of that. Okay. And my solvent-free gel. There it is. And I reached down and grab it. I was running, and it's because I'm using a lot of it now. Partly is the scale of the painting, but the other part is literally because of the thickness of the paint. I'm starting to use more Indian yellow. I just ran out of it. So let's see if I have it right to my right if I need more. Oh, that's good. That's a pretty color. Okay, let's see what we can get with some of these beautiful. Well, look at that. That's a great bright color. I think I might even bring a little cat orange into it. Just even pop it up a little bit here. Okay, that ought to do it. That maybe overdid it. But let's give it a shot. What do you say? Kind of like, got a little bit of it in here. I see some colors back in here. Bring a little bit of Naples into it to mellow that cat orange I threw into it. And in case you're wondering what I'm doing, I was adding a little bit of CAD yellow light to that. Okay, let's see where I can see these colors. Right. Whoa, look at that color. That's screaming, huh?
So you're obviously exaggerating.
What?
I said you're obviously exaggerating.
Absolutely. And question that might occur to somebody: would I be doing the kind of exaggeration if I wasn't under this time constraint? If I was, possibly. That's the answer.
Or if you were painting on site.
Painting on site, I probably wouldn't have the time, but I would. My preference would be, I'd like to think I would do this. Let's put it that way. Got to be careful I don't pick and I hit big areas and then come back and get the smaller areas later. It's a dirty color, isn't it? But let's take and use this color on top of it and that color. And then we might come up with almost the textural look of that rock. Color on color, layers, setting up for your next layer. All these are things that you need to kind of keep in your head at times when you're doing this. It's like everything is a setup for what comes on top of it. A little bit of a coming up from the shadow. You can carry some of your detail into the shadow. It helps the continuity and it doesn't make the shadow just this opaque mess. which is what I just tried to do here. And this rock goes behind this rock. So we're going to get that in there. And this goes behind well, I got to be careful. I don't dwell in one area too long. I kind of felt like I was starting to. That's why I said that. I'm picking a little too much with a little brush right now. So I'm going to switch back to the knife. You start to feel things. And I think part of that is truthfully experience. You just start to feel like, well, you know, I'm fussing around a little too much here. Maybe I ought to move on to something else. So I'm going to clarify some of the real bright lights now. And I'm going to pick up more white, and mix it into that yellow that I had mixed. So I'm even whiter.
Tom had an interesting question. When you're switching to a knife, will you need to go over everything to get the same texture? If that makes any sense.
Not everything, no.
Just areas where you.
Yeah, if I paint the whole thing with a knife, yeah. A lot of times you just want the textures in the lights, because that's what really sits out on top. If you think about it, the light is what is the last thing that occurs. So if you think of an image, and that image is in the shadow, and then we add light, the light is what really pops it. So a lot of times this is really where you want to use your knife, is more in the lights. And I'm mixing this, sometimes the warm and the light together. And if I stand back a little bit, boy, I really start to see the variation more than I do when I'm up close. It's the fun stuff. This is the fun stuff that I could probably play with for the next 2 to 3 hours. But you know what? I'm only going to play with it for about the next 20 minutes. And we're going to try and make it look as close to complete as I can in that amount of time. Step back, keep stepping back. I look and I see, I'll look at an area in the photo, I'll look at an area in the painting. And when I see it, and if I know it really, it's going to help, because there's certain areas that are going to help more than other areas. Not that, I mean, because you can't hit every area. You just can't. I mean, you can if you want to spend a week on this thing. You could probably build up wonderful textures. But in essence, what you're trying to do is create the look of this in an abbreviated fashion, which is what plein air is. Plein air is complete abbreviation. No matter how realistic something looks, it is has to be quite abbreviated in plein air. Just there's no way the art and the super skilled painters can make it look like, oh, it's really real and finished. But when you look at it close, you realize, my word, that's only paint. That's a great painting when you get those kind of paintings, in my opinion. When you're going to find artists that think differently, which is one of the best things about art, is that there's room for everybody and there's room for everyone's opinion. I want to come up with some of the darks in there too, in that one area. A little bit of that bright yellow. Let's put a bit of that right in here. Whoop, went a little too dark there. So you just push it back into the paint. I want to get a little bit more in here too. Just a little bit of a change going on. Not a lot, just a little. So I'm going to start with, I took the sky color and kind of mixed it into some of my other dirty paint. And let's see if we can come up with a little bit of texture without making it pop too much. If it pops too much, what I do is I just take that big brush and push it right back into that, all that dirty, whoa, like that. Just because I got some of that orange came out, and we don't want orange back here. You know, it can be violets and blues, but we don't want orange back in that area. Down in here, we can put a little bit of textural characteristics. So looks a little vacant right in here. Didn't see it till I stepped back. And I see, get the feeling I'm going to need to use a little bit of my small brush to come in and clarify things. And I'll grab this little brush here, pick up a kind of a neutral, slightly warm dark. And sometimes you can do that with a knife. Add these little slivers of detail to make the mountain feel more complete. That looks like it worked okay. I step back. Oh, you know what I need to do? This is the shadow part, and then there's a light part to that. So let's put that in. Let's take the green. Let's take some raw sienna with that green, maybe a little yellow ochre. Yeah, it's a lot warmer than it looks. I know it's green, and that's a mistake we can make. I know it's green, but it's more like that color. Yep. There we go. So that mountain goes from shadow into a little bit of light, and then there's even some little lighter spots than that on it, but they're pretty, like right in here.
Tom would like to know, if you're making this into a more finished painting, would you simplify the shadowed mountain? Or would you probably get more?
I'm not sure what shadows are talking about these shadows or
The
these big
shadow.
shadows.
The shadowed mountain.
I don't know. I really haven't had time to look at it. No. I might, but I don't want it to look flat and empty. So simplify, yes, but how much? I'm not really sure. You know, it's one of those things that you have to judge as the painting develops. I was planning on keeping some of these like understated, and you can do some of that sometimes with a knife. In here, I could probably make one more layer. That would probably help. I could probably come back into this area. You know, you have to kind of judge your painting as it's coming along. In other words, you're using, I've mentioned this in teaching quite often, you're using a certain amount of intuition, and then you're also using judgment. And the judgment is the assessment of what you've achieved thus so far. And very often the two aren't gelling, and you need to kind of go back and figure out what you need to do. Like, I want to clarify that there's little tiny feelings of other areas in here that I don't want to ignore too much, because it doesn't feel like the mountain is as complete there. So I'm kind of bouncing all around. I'm looking at things. I'm looking at, as I step back, I let my eye just kind of go over the whole piece. And if something jumps out at me, that's what I jump on. And then I step back and do the same thing again. And you're going to do that over and over and over again, really until you think you're done. You judge your strokes from up close. You judge the painting from back far. I think I've said that before, but probably it's worth repeating. You judge the character, the aesthetics of your strokes up close, but you judge the effectiveness of the painting itself as you step back. So I'm stepping back right now. It's working okay. I'm going to go back into the sky for a second, and I've saved the brush, so I never had to, I never abandon that, and get rid of a couple of the drips, some of the edges, like that edge there. I want to come down. And has to do, the question came earlier about edges with clouds. And so I'm coming in and softening certain edges. You come down against it and you'll soften it. If you go around it, you actually sharpen it. To me, it's feeling okay. There's things that as I look at the total, I can see. My eye went to this area over here. I felt like it was a little underdone, and so I picked up some more blue, and I'm going to come back into. This is what makes one painting different than another painting, even though the artists may work on the same subject. But the simple fact that something bothers one artist more than it bothers another means that they were probably going to fuss on that area a little bit more. I always like to think the best thing to do is just keep your eye moving around. Don't dwell in any one area for too long, and get away from your painting. I mean, on a question has been brought up a couple times about if this were a studio painting. If this were a studio painting, I'd be working on it probably for 3 or 4 days. Not all day on the painting, but I would literally be evaluating it each day and seeing if there's something that I left that I shouldn't have left, or there's something more that I should have added. And the only way you know that I know that, I should say, is to get away from your painting.
So Mitchell was wondering, he said, just curious about movement in a landscape. My eye seems to be moving counterclockwise. Orange peak at the third to the bright yellow, then down the diagonal green trees to the shadow blues in the foreground. Do you think about this kind of stuff?
No, but when I'm done, I do.
meant to say his eye goes clockwise. Sorry.
When I'm done, I do. I literally am not that organized initially. I'm pretty much geared towards coming up with the feeling of the painting. My plan usually, and I like to talk about that the concept of a plan, because I think anybody that starts any painting, particularly if I'm doing this on location, I'm painting almost, if I'm painting this on location, I'm doing almost identically what I'm doing here. I doubt if I would be doing much different, because I know that I only have a given amount of time. So now if I'm working on a painting in a studio and I know it's going to be for a period of time, I know I have the opportunity to come back each day and look at it with a fresh eye, analyze it, evaluate it. One of the things that I've stated to friends and artists and students is I try and paint on a studio painting the same way I would if I were doing a plein air painting. The biggest difference is time. I would be going slower. That's it. I would be doing damn near the same thing, but I'd be going a little slower. Now, what do I mean by slower? I mean, the strokes, I'd be more careful. Like, watch, I'm going to go. And if I don't like it, I would pick another color up and fix it. So that's the biggest difference. The biggest difference is that I would be spending more time evaluating my painting as I'm going. When I'm working on a plein air piece on location, I evaluate it, but I don't have the luxury of evaluating it. You know, I step back as often as I can, because it's the same thing when doing plein air, is that you paint it from a certain distance, but you evaluate it from another distance. It's just the way it goes. I mean, I'm wrong. If I try and do the whole thing up close, 90% of the time, I'm at the end, I'm going to go, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Well, the simple answer is I did it because I never stood back. If I stood back, I probably would have caught it and I may not have done it. So I think it's a lesson I learned. I don't say anyone taught it to me. I just began to figure it out on my own. That if I stay on top of the painting for too long, generally I will overwork it. I learned a little of that as an illustrator, because as an illustrator, we all, and I'm speaking for all of you guys out there, that all of you old illustrators, we often we didn't have that luxury of being able to sit back and evaluate. It's like, get it done. Now, here's your assignment, get it done. So you just plow ahead on that one piece and hoping to God that you're doing something that not only the client wants, but that you're not embarrassed about. So I'm cleaning up a few things. And I can clean it up with the knife, and I can clean it up with the brush. So I'm going to add a little bit of let's see where I'm. Oh, there's a great crevice right there. Why didn't I get that? Let's get it. Comes right from here, goes down, disappears, picks up again, disappears, picks up again, works its way over. I should have been doing these with a knife. It works better. Let's see what we can do here. Any of these other little peaks and pulls that I can pull out. That's a little heavy-handed. That's a little bit better. Right there's a beautiful place to really come in and power in a little bit of a stronger dark. And right here, and a few of these darks go up, over, another one about in here. And when I'm done, I will probably go in, although immediately when I'm done, I'm going to go change, get a suit on, which I don't wear that often, but I actually enjoy wearing. And we're going to take our grandson to his uncle's wedding, where he's going to be a ring bearer, which ought to be kind of interesting since he isn't walking. But should be fun. So I will probably come back to this tomorrow and maybe put a few minutes into it. Again, I try not to lose the integrity of the overall approach that I did. The overall approach being more a 90-minute painting. I don't want to turn this into a studio painting. If I were to do a studio painting of this, God knows, who knows, I might even do one eventually. But I would start from scratch. Spend a little bit longer on the drawing, a little bit longer on several parts of it. And I might eventually do that. I don't know. Not on this one. A lot of people have asked me, what are you going to do with these when you're done? I've been asked that question many times. Literally what we're thinking of doing is I think I'm going to eventually just do an auction and auction these off. Maybe start with a really low figure of maybe, I don't know, $500 and see what happens. Because I've got a stack of probably, I don't have all of them because some of them have gone to galleries. The galleries I'm with have asked for some of the pieces and I've let them have them. But I have the vast majority. And anyway, that's one of the thoughts. That's a big Dolomite painting. And it's okay. I mean, I'm not, let me put it this way, you guys. I'm not embarrassed with it. It's good enough for me to say it looks decent. And that's truly my goal whenever I do these, is not to completely embarrass myself. And sometimes I tackle things, as I probably did today, that I maybe shouldn't have tried to tackle in 90 minutes. But what the heck? This is how you learn. I mean, now I know that a painting like this, I should probably give myself, say, 3 hours on, as in terms of a demo. Just about twice as long. Because what I would do, it would be very boring to watch. Because what happens is my time would be spent going back and doing this kind of little fussy stuff. And it's not the coolest stuff to watch when you're seeing demonstrations. I know I've watched demonstrations. I know what, and I'm an artist and I can kind of get into it, but there are things that just, they don't bode well in terms of demos. And that's why when we started this went with this 90-minute, because I've learned in doing a few workshops, after about 90 minutes, I start losing people. And as cute and tricky as I try to be, I still lose them. So it's not for lack of trying. And so that's why when we did this, the 90-minute seemed to be the best way to go. And so I've tried to stay with it. And we're at 90 minutes as I speak. So let me add a few little strokes in and we'll call it quits for today. So I have to get my suit on and try and clean the paint off my hands and not look like an artist. And take little Jude to the wedding. it gives me an excuse to wear a suit, which I haven't had on for God knows how long because we've been in this pandemic and had no no place to wear it. And I'm one of these weird artists that actually enjoys putting on a suit and tie. No, I know most artists don't. My buddy Brian, I think I've seen him in a suit, but not that often. I don't think I've seen him. Yeah, I have seen him in a suit. Come to think of it. Now, other artists, friends of mine, I know Scott Pryor loves to wear a suit. Chuck Pyle doesn't mind. So artists aren't just slobs, everybody. Anyway, I could fuss on this for a lot longer. I may do a little bit of touch up here and there, probably tomorrow, and I will repost this when I do. I hope it worked for all of you. I had fun. Got a little concerned at times because I really felt behind, but kind of came together. In any event, that's where we're going to leave it for right now. It seems to do what I want. I could probably punch up some of the lights in the clouds just a little bit here and there, but overall, it's okay. All right. I don't have anything else to add to this other than I wish you all happy painting, and I'm going to go get my suit on. So thanks, everybody.